we've talked about how nouns have case, nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative case, and now we look at gender. There are 3 genders to nouns: masculine, feminine, and neuter. Like case, gender is identified by the ending of the noun, and it's important to not get too caught up in the biological implications of talking about gender. It's just a grammatical category. Verbs, unlike nouns, do not have gender. A noun has case, number, and gender. We've talked about gender, now let's talk about number. A noun will be either singular or plural. Like case and gender, number is identified by the ending of a noun. Verbs do have number, and verbs will match the nouns that they are associated with, or verbs will match the nouns that they're operative with. So if we want to say something like, the church has wisdom, in Greek, we would say, he ekklesia, the church, ek, has, and notice this is a third person singular present active indicative verb, which we've only learned the present active indicative. But what's important about this, he ekklesia, eche, is that it's a third person, or sorry, nouns don't have person, but they do have number. It's a singular noun. So the singular noun gets a singular verb, eche. And what does the church has? The church has wisdom, Sophion. So this is the word wisdom, and Sophion is in the accusative. So ekklesia is singular, Sophion is singular, and the verb eche is singular because the noun is going to match the verb in terms of its number. Now, remember, verbs don't have gender, so they don't have to match in the case of gender. And again, the case of a noun determines its function in the sentence. So the first declension nouns, the nominatives, which are going to be your subjects, are in the nominative singular: Sophia, hora, doxa, thalassa, agape, phone. Now, what you notice is you have these pure alpha uses of the first declension. This is where in the singular, nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative, it's consistently the alpha at the end of the in the ending. You see the same thing with hora. Doxa is mixed because you have the alpha that starts with it, similarly with thalassa, C, but the eta sneaks in the genitive and the dative. Then you have the pure etas, which end in the eta, and in the nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative maintains the eta, although notice it switches with the alpha in the nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative plural. So you can learn these patterns, but what you'll notice is if you pay attention, there's a consistency to what's going on here, where the nominative is going to end in its normal ending. The genitive singular is always going to end in the sigma. The dative is singular is always going to end in that, not necessarily an eta, but that iota subscript, either on the eta or the alpha. So in the case of the alpha with the iota subscript, the alpha, or the eta with the iota subscript. And the dative is always going to have that iota subscript. So when you see that iota subscript, that's going to be your flashing red light. Oh, I'm looking at the dative. Look at the accusative singular, always ends in that nu, right? So phonein, agapein, thalassan, doxan, horan, sophian. When it ends in that nu, you're looking at an accusative in the singular. The nominative plural is always that alpha iota. So you see that consistent pattern. The dative plural is the omega nu consistent pattern. The dative plural is the alpha iota sigma, and the alpha sigma is the accusative plural. So there is this consistent pattern with these first declension nouns. Now, these first declension nouns are all feminine. There are some first declension nouns that are masculine. We'll see these in lesson 6 of Croy. But when you look up nouns in the lexicon, their gender is going to be indicated by the definite article, which always matches the noun it modifies in number and gender. We'll learn about definite articles in lesson 5, but for now, when you see this hey next to a letter, or next to a word. So for example, in lesson 3 on page 12, when you see hey next to basileia, that's telling you, oh, basileia is a feminine noun. That's telling you its gender when you look it up in the lexicon. So if you want to know why the changes in paradigms occur when all the nouns are in the first declension, there is a consistent pattern. When the stem ends with an epsilon, a iota, or a rho, then the alpha of the nominative singular is retained. So Sophia, Hemera, when the stem ends in that iota, that rho, or an epsilon, you keep the alpha ending. But if the stem ends with a sibilant, zeta, sigma, xi, or psi, anything with kind of that S sound in it, then the alpha lengthens to an eta in the genitive and dative singular, doxa, thalassa. If the stem ends with an eta, then the eta is retained throughout the singular cases. So if you want to look at the pattern here, again, you can see the genitive is always going to end with that sigma, the iota subscript, the nu, and then you have the consistent pattern in the nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative plural. Remember, the nominative is going to be your subject. The genitive is that of whatever the noun is. The dative is to, in, with, by, whatever the noun is. The accusative is going to be your direct object. And then you have the singular and the plural.